Good evening. You're watching ARIRANG News at 8. It's Wednesday, January 8th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Yeon-ji. Today marks the 22nd year since Korean victims of sexual slavery by wartime Japan started their weekly protest rally near the Japanese embassy in Korea. The protest continues to this day, with the participants calling on Japan to acknowledge its wartime atrocities and offer legal compensation. Our Yeon-ji reports on the victims' persistent demand for justice.
On Wednesday, two surviving victims of sexual enslavement by the Japanese military during World War II stood across from the Japanese embassy in Seoul, as they've done so many times in the past, along with human rights activists and civic groups. For the last 22 years, those coerced into sexual slavery for the Japanese military have held a demonstration every Wednesday, which makes it the longest rally ever in the world. The group has demanded Japan fully admit to and reveal the truth about its war crimes, offer an official apology and legal reparations, punish those responsible for the crimes, accurately report on the crimes in history textbooks, and build memorials and museums in remembrance of the victims. However, the victims, also known as former comfort women, feel Japan has not accepted any of their demands. Japanese politicians continue to make comments that defame the victims and distort history. Among the 237 Koreans recognized by the government as victims of sexual slavery under the Japanese military, only 56 of them are alive today. Meanwhile, Korea and Japan are engaged in a battle in cyberspace over a comfort women memorial that was set up in a park near the Glendale Public Library in California last July. The Glendale Memorial is a replica of this one installed directly across the street from the Japanese embassy in Seoul, which depicts a girl dressed in traditional Korean clothing. The White House says a netizen submitted an online petition last week seeking protection for the Glendale statue. This petition was filed in protest of another petition submitted last month that asked authorities to remove the Comfort Woman Memorial in Glendale. About 120,000 people signed the petition demanding its removal, whereas the one seeking protection for the memorial had about 3,000 signatures as of Tuesday morning, local time. The White House's policy is to respond to a petition that has received 100,000 signatures or more within 30 days after being submitted. Yeon-ji, ARIRANG News.
Over in Japan, the country's ruling party has set constitutional reform and continued visits to the Yasukuni Shrine as key goals for the coming year, in a move that is sure to further escalate tensions in Northeast Asia. Our Yeon-ji has the details.
Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party has unveiled its key goals for the coming year: reform the constitution and continue with visits to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine. During a general meeting on Tuesday, the party decided to, quote, make practical constitutional reforms without damaging the original purpose of the country's pacifist constitution. The party also vowed not to wage war and agreed to uphold the tradition of visiting the Yasukuni Shrine, which honors 2.5 million Japanese war dead, including 14 Class A war criminals. With regard to education, the party promised to ensure that students will not be taught a pessimistic concept of history by putting in place measures for making and adopting textbooks. Those plans, however, are expected to face a strong backlash from Korea and China. The biggest concern being brought up in both countries is that Japan is trying to become a country that is allowed to engage in war by amending its pacifist constitution. The current constitution, adopted after the nation's defeat in World War II, bans the country from using military force.
Should the Japanese leader avoid facing Japan's history of militaristic invasion and not take sincere steps toward reflecting on its past wrongdoing, the country will be led down a wrongful and dangerous path.
The decision to continue visits to the war shrine is also expected to draw criticism not only from Seoul and Beijing, but many countries around the world, just as it did after Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's latest visit there. In line with its goals for the coming year, the Abe administration has also officially launched a secretariat of the National Security Council that will serve as the control tower for the government's security policies. Yeon-ji, ARIRANG News.
And that diplomatic tension in Northeast Asia was thoroughly discussed at Korea-U.S. talks between high officials in Washington on Tuesday. Both South Korea Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and his U.S. counterpart John Kerry agreed to strengthen efforts to promote peace and cooperation in the region. Yeon-ji reports.
Korea has delivered its message to the United States that history disputes remain a stumbling block to improving relations in Northeast Asia. Following an hour-long meeting with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Washington Tuesday, Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se said the current situation in the region calls for sincere actions, adding that the two agreed on the need to alleviate tensions.
Secretary Kerry and I also recognize the growing uncertainty pervading Northeast Asia in recent times. In particular, I pointed out that historical issues stand in the way of reconciliation and cooperation in this region.
While neither Yoon nor Kerry directly mentioned Japan by name, the comments are almost certainly aimed at Tokyo, as they come just weeks after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine escalated tensions with Korea and China. The shrine honors Japan's war dead, including several Class A war criminals. The two officials also agreed to urge Pyongyang to get rid of its nuclear program.
We call on the North Korea to denuclearize. We will not accept North Korea as a nuclear state, nor as a nuclear-armed state, and nor will the international community abide by that.
Emphasizing the two countries stand united, Kerry added the United States is fully committed to the defense of South Korea and said it will continue to modernize its military capabilities in preparation against any threat. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
And in the latest sign of commitment to regional security by the U.S., Washington said it will deploy more troops and heavy tanks in South Korea to rebalance its forces across the Asia-Pacific. 800 additional troops, battle tanks, and vehicles are set to start a 9-month deployment on February 1st in Gyeonggi-do province, just south of the demilitarized zone separating the two Koreas. The U.S. already has roughly 28,000 troops stationed here. The move comes at a time of raised tensions on the peninsula after the execution of Chang Song-taek, the once powerful uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, last month. Up in the north, former NBA star Dennis Rodman has never shied away from controversy, but he took things to a new level on Tuesday, having a complete meltdown on CNN when asked about a missionary detained in North Korea. When the CNN anchor asked Rodman whether he would use his visit to North Korea to raise the case of Kenneth Bae, a Korean-American tour guide who has been imprisoned in North Korea for over a year on vague charges of hostile acts against the state, Rodman erupted into a foul-mouthed rant in which he said he deserved to be serving time. He also tried to defend his heavily criticized basketball diplomacy tour. Rodman is currently in Pyongyang for an exhibition game against the North Korean national team Wednesday in what they are saying is a birthday present for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Touch base with journalists, experts, and analysts who are taking the pulse of Asia's heartbeat.
South Korea's defense minister.
In a lively half hour, join ARIRANG's Yoo-ji for the day's top stories, current affairs, business, technology trends, plus global weather forecasts and more. ARIRANG News. Every weeknight, live on ARIRANG TV.
The Korean government says the domestic economic recovery is gathering momentum despite lingering global economic uncertainties. In its monthly Green Book report released Wednesday, the finance ministry said major economic indicators like production and investment improved last October and November compared to the third quarter of last year. It also cited stabilizing prices and expanding employment. However, the report also pointed to the weak Japanese yen and the U.S. Federal Reserve's bond buying stimulus tapering as major uncertainties that could hurt the nation's growth rate in the long run. Over now to Korea's boom in the medical tourism industry. The health tourism surplus topped $100 million for the first time last year, thanks largely to increased spending by overseas travelers seeking health care and medical services in the country. The Bank of Korea said Wednesday that the country's income from medical tourism was $187 million in the first 11 months of last year, growing more than 35% from the same period in 2012. During the same period, however, local residents' overseas spending on medical tourism decreased by more than 11%. Korea saw its first surplus in the medical tourism industry in 2011. The Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas has the place to be for global electronics companies to showcase their latest and greatest products. And automakers are also getting in on the action. This year, they're showing off new ways to incorporate the gadgets we use each day into our driving experience. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
By embracing smartphone and mobile computing technologies, automakers are beginning to blur the line between our digital and driving lives. BMW made a splash at the opening day of this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas by demonstrating a way to control its new i3 electric car using Samsung's Galaxy Gear smartwatch and Bluetooth wireless technology.
Using Samsung's Galaxy Gear, you can remotely control the car's temperature, recharge the car battery, and operate the door locks.
Mercedes-Benz, not to be outdone, is using the Pebble smartwatch to show off a new way to check up on vehicle conditions.
We see the total mileage, we see the tire pressure, so you have full information of your vehicle on your watch.
Audi teamed up with Google to bring Android to cars. An Android tablet was designed to provide in-car entertainment such as music and streaming videos. The owner can also search for apps in the Google Play Store. This year's CES is proving that more and more automakers are rushing to make sure there is no disconnect between the gadgets we use each and every day and the vehicles that get us where we're going. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
On our one-on-one this evening, we look into extreme weather conditions around the globe. The Arctic temperatures in North America and extreme heat waves in South America have been making headlines over the last few days with record-breaking conditions. For more, we connect live to our Kim Ji-yeon in the news center. Ji-yeon, let's start with the colder part of the region. How bad is it and how cold is it?
Well, hard to believe, Chie, but temperatures have dipped below freezing in all 50 U.S. states now. Take a look at the city of Chicago, where temperatures came in at minus 30 degrees Celsius on Tuesday. You can see Lake Michigan and some of the city's most famous skyscrapers frozen like popsicles. Over to the East Coast and New York City, where it was minus 15.5 degrees Celsius on Tuesday, setting a new record. Around 14 counties in the state of New York declared a state of emergency due to the frigid conditions, closing schools and airports. Flights going in and out of the country and the region were suspended, and more than 500 passengers taking regular train services in Chicago were left stranded in their compartments for 14 hours when the trains they were traveling in got stuck in ice and snow.
No, I can't feel the hands. All my hair is freezing, so I can't smile. I can't.
Some cities like Milwaukee, St. Louis, and Chicago experienced freezing temperatures that dipped to below minus 40 degrees. That's colder than some of the most remote places on Earth. The average temperatures in the South Pole are known to be around minus 34 degrees, even lower than those found on the planet Mars, which has average temperatures of around minus 25 to 31 degrees.
Planet Mars. So what's causing these record low temperatures?
Well, experts attribute the rush of cold air due to what's called a distorted polar vortex, which is a circulation of strong upper-level winds that normally surround the northern pole in the counterclockwise direction. Normally, a polar low-pressure system keeps the bitter cold air locked in the Arctic regions of the northern hemisphere, but this can become distorted and dip further south, which is what the United States is experiencing right now.
Well, some say this may be a side effect of global warming. What do the experts say?
Well, that's a very hotly debated question right now. And yes, some researchers do say that the Arctic air mass that the U.S. is experiencing could be related to global warming because it coincides with unusually high temperatures in other regions like the Slovenian Alps and Slovenia that are usually cold at this time of the year.
The winter used to be much colder, as we all know. This is certainly a result of global warming.
Because we've got this very strong westerly jet stream blowing across the UK, it's tending to draw a lot of warm air up from the Mediterranean, also from further afield, such as the tropical Atlantic. So lots of warm air moving up across Spain, into Italy, and into parts of southeastern Europe.
Right, so how long are the abnormal temperatures expected to last?
Well, the U.S. National Weather Service says it expects this Arctic air mass to continue until Friday. Authorities are advising people to stay inside whenever possible and layer clothing if you have to go outside.
All right, that was our Kim Ji-yeon reporting live from the News Center. And from extreme weather conditions to extremely bad air conditions, the smog-filled skies above China are a visible reminder of the heavy price the nation is paying for its rapid economic development. The latest medical report suggests as many as 500,000 people are dying each year in the country due to air pollution. Connie Kim has the details.
The smog-cloaked skylines of Chinese cities aren't just an eyesore. They're affecting the health of Chinese citizens. A report published in the Lancet Medical Journal says that air pollution in China is responsible for between 350,000 to 500,000 premature deaths every year. Former Chinese Health Minister Chen Zhu and the co-authors of the report used information from the World Bank and the World Health Organization that included real-time air monitoring data across cities. Recognizing the growing problem, the Chinese government has invested $280 billion to crack down on major polluters. The measures are expected to cut down premature deaths in the nation by up to 200,000 annually. But there is no easy fix. While industrial and coal plants, along with vehicles, are known to be the major polluters, Chen, the author of the study, said the multiple sources of pollution in China make it difficult to control. The smog belt in China had been mainly confined to the capital city of Beijing, but it has rapidly expanded to other cities like Shanghai and Nanjing. On Tuesday, the Chinese government issued its highest level smog warning in the northern and central regions and advised people to avoid outdoor activities. It's a growing problem that doesn't just affect China. The Korean government issued fine dust warnings for the first time ever in December after it blew over across the West Sea, and additional warnings have come in recent weeks. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
In a move seen as an important step toward dismantling Syria's chemical weapons stockpile, the first batch of chemical weapons materials was loaded onto a ship and taken out of the country on Tuesday. The operation is the first step in a UN-led deal to rid the country of its deadly chemical arsenal. Our Sun Jung-in has the details.
Raw materials for poison gas were loaded Tuesday onto a Danish cargo ship at Syria's port of Latakia in what is being seen as a major milestone in a plan to rid the country of its chemical arms by the middle of this year. The UN and the International Chemical Weapons Watchdog responsible for ensuring the weapons destruction said the Danish ship is on course for a meeting with a U.S. Navy vessel that will then take the cargo out to international waters where it will be destroyed. The chemicals were scheduled to be removed from Syria by December 31st, but a worsening domestic conflict, bad weather, and other factors delayed the operation by a week. Syria agreed to abandon its chemical weapons by June of this year under a deal brokered by the U.S. and Russia. The deal came about in response to a chemical weapons attack on a Damascus suburb last August that left at least 1,400 civilians dead. Since then, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's forces have been under international pressure over allegations that he used sarin nerve gas in the attack. The weapons removal operation is taking place against the backdrop of a widening civil war and escalating infight between rebel factions. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the war, now in its third year, has killed more than 130,000 people. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
With exactly 1 month before the start of the Winter Olympics, Russia has put its security forces in Sochi on combat alert. 2 recent suicide bomb attacks in the nearby city has the country on edge, and Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to ensure the games run without incident. As part of the tight security, cars without local license plates or special permits are not allowed to enter the city or go near Olympic facilities, and visitors must register with local authorities within 3 days, or they risk being thrown out. More than 30,000 police and soldiers are also on the ground to help the other 7,000 security personnel secure the area. In culture news, a Korean artifact has come home, decades after it was stolen during Japan's colonial rule of Korea. Our Park Ji-won has more on the return of the 18th century Buddhist tapestry.
This grand Buddhist tapestry, which is more than 3 square meters, is believed to have been made in early 18th century Korea. It shows Buddha giving a sermon to his followers. Experts believe the textile's artistic value lies in the way it depicts Buddha and his followers. Most paintings show Buddha's disciples sitting behind him, but in the tapestry, 2 disciples sit in front of Buddha, listening attentively as he speaks.
Numerous artists have drawn Buddha's disciples, but this tapestry depicts them in a deeply moving way that touches the hearts of viewers. I personally believe that proves that the tapestry has artistic value and should be designated a national treasure.
The tapestry was stolen from a Buddhist temple in Korea during Japan's colonial rule in the early 20th century. It was then sold to a famous Japanese art dealer. Later, it was auctioned in New York in 1944 and sold for $450 to a museum in Virginia. The tapestry had been rolled up in a storeroom for some 40 years until the museum turned it over to the Overseas Korean Cultural Heritage Foundation last month. It is currently housed at the National Museum of Korea. The tapestry is one of the many artworks that were taken or stolen during Japan's 35-year colonial rule over the peninsula in the early 20th century. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
As we reported earlier, many across the globe are struggling with abnormal weather conditions. And although we here in Korea have been lucky enough to enjoy mild winter weather, things are about to change. For details, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung.
Good evening, Chi-hye. The first cold wave watch of the season has been issued here in Seoul. It's currently -2 degrees outside, but I was just out there and it feels a lot colder due to the strong cold winds. Taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is under the influence of a cold high pressure system, which is why we're seeing cloudy skies in the East Coast regions. Now, temperatures have begun to drop, and by tomorrow, morning lows will dip to -9 degrees, and the cold snap will continue through Friday, so make sure to dress warmly. Otherwise, the mountains in Jeju, which are seeing snow, could get up to 40 centimeters of snow. Looking ahead at tomorrow's readings, Seoul will mix it to -3 degrees. Meanwhile, Gwangju and Busan peak at -1 and 4 degrees respectively. Moving on to other regions, snow showers are forecast in Jeju with a high of 3. Meanwhile, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang top out at -1 and -7 degrees respectively. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, and let's take a look at the international weather.
And that's a broadcast on this Wednesday night. I'm Yeon-ji in Seoul. Thank you for watching.